Welcome to Like a Bomb, a podcast about powerful women from the past and present. Not fragile like a flower.
Fragile like a bomb.
Alright, welcome to episode 5 of Like a Bomb. So one thing is today that's special. Now, no one listening can see the video, but you and I can. So you see I have my little beanie baby that looks like
Aw.
Soxy.
Aw.
It's because today would be Soxy Brownie's 16th birthday.
Wow, they're old.
I know. They got to be
um,
old men.
they sure did. They did. I
Yes.
haven't figured out where I'm going to put their little ashes boxes anywhere or their little footprints
Mm-hmm.
because they're fragile. So I will get
Yes.
to that point.
And you have kittens.
Yes, and they are into literally everything. I did find Mister's horsey, and
Oh, the one that got the butt bitten off.
yes, and I think a half of his foot's taken, and I pulled him out, and then no, Brody went straight for it, and nope, he was very
How
upset,
rude.
very very upset.
I mean, Mister loved cuddling with that thing, which I find adorable because I didn't care less for it anymore.
It's just not a normal, like, I every time I go to the store and I see pet toys, I'm like, all these cute stuffed animals, they have squeak toys in the middle of them. Cats don't like the squeak toys, but
Well,
why have
Mister
they?
loved the crinkle,
Yeah,
which,
but that's the thing. They don't make bigger ones for cats, though. And my boys will carry these huge stuffed animals around the house.
well, there was a decent, like, 6 to 8 inch long salmon crinkles cat toy that I got at Target
Hmm. I think
last
we,
summer.
yep, I think I have that. Green? No, that
No,
would
no,
be.
no. You guys got a different one because Piper sent me a video of that one, but it's a salmon and it has like a rainbow stripe because it's part of the Pride collection. Because
Okay.
I thought it was just too cute for future cats since
They
Percy
do,
didn't like Crinkle.
yeah, they do like well, they pull their toys out. They're half of them are upstairs, half of them are downstairs.
Aw, babies.
Yeah, and Finn knows how to play catch. So
Oh,
he'll play catch with, or fetch. Sorry, basically fetch because I throw, he brings it back because he is
aw,
kind of a puppy.
yeah.
Well, any other updates, or do you want to jump in? Is it me first, you first? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the only big thing is just as we discussed prior, the car, and it's also I need to figure out selling Murphy.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have options. I just need to clean it out.
I started on that today. I did a lot of cleaning on the car today, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
finish everything. I figure I'll wait till after I go to Virginia this weekend because it makes more sense to wait till I'm not, probably eating Chick-fil-A in the car.
Yeah. Um, Also, I've been doing lots of scheming for when we go to Salem this week, so I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
Cool. I am not getting a new book bag because they're stupid expensive. Well, at least not at this moment. So,
Um, is it LL Bean?
yeah,
I got an ad that they're 50% off their sale or whatever. I don't know if that has the backpacks you want.
it's not the one I want.
Of course.
Yeah, I've already looked and I've been all over the place and scoured the internet for one that is what I want. And it's the only one. It's from LL Bean. It's $100 and some dollars. So I got to make this bag work for the trip, but I'm trying to figure out, we'll probably want layers. I mean, I don't know. I would assume I'll
Hmm.
want layers. So I have to figure that out. But the shirts are made, so I have those ready.
Perfect. Yeah, I was especially trying to make sure there was restaurants that wouldn't kill you.
That's one of the things I need to go. I needed to start making my like toiletry bag so I can make
All
sure
the
that we
Benadryl.
have a ton of Benadryl. Yep.
At least we can buy some while we're there.
Yeah, I mean you can find it at the Dollar Tree.
Yeah, and I'm sure there is. I mean, there's Chick-fil-A up there.
Well, you know, Chick-fil-A's everywhere.
And people like their homophobic chicken.
Yeah. I have a free French fry from them. Probably going to get them for lunch tomorrow.
Same. I also have the free French fry. It was
Mm,
their little game thing.
moo game. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to dive into the stories, unless you got any other big updates from this week.
No, I go back to work next week. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Granted, I've been working all summer. That just go back to my, main full-time job,
Whoa.
teaching children. Okay, well, I keep having all this planned out and then I always change my plan. But I'm doing somebody because they passed away recently and they were already on my list.
No.
So I decided that I was just going to do it now. And for all you younger folks that have no idea what I may be talking about, just listen because Dr. Ruth was huge when I was growing up and she was everywhere. And when you heard her voice, you were like, oh, things might get weird because they might. Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Westheimer. I Googled a lot, and there's going to be some names that just be patient. But better known as Dr. Ruth, and she was a famous personality and sex therapist.
Interesting.
So if you have children around that you don't want to explain things to, I don't really get into any of her advice or stuff, but I do say, sex. So
I
there's your
mean,
warning.
I do mark this episode on YouTube and Spotify as explicit just because the topics we talk about, it's just safer to mark it
Yeah.
as explicit even though we don't curse.
Yep. Yeah, I was talking to Christine about it, and she's, I was like, we don't cuss, but some of the topics are, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, she was born, and again, I Googled the pronunciation, but I'm still not sure this is right because her birth name, according to the pronunciations I got, her first name was Carola. So I don't think that's right. Carola, with a little bit more emphasis in another part, I thought maybe, but middle name Ruth and last name Siegel. June 4th, 1928 in Frankfurt, Germany. So she did die recently. She died July 12th of this year
Oh,
at
wow.
96 in Manhattan. Yep. So her father was Julius Siegel. He was a wholesaler. Her mother was Irma Siegel, and she was a housekeeper. She said, so I looked at a lot of different articles. I think a lot of the articles were pulling information from a testimony she did for a website that's a collection of Holocaust survivors' testimonies. So I think the way it read is a lot of them were pulling information. She said she felt like she was pretty spoiled growing up. She had a bunch of baby dolls and she had roller skates and, she got to have things and do things. So by the time she's 10 years old, we're in 1938, and she saw her father arrested. She said when he was taken, he gave her like a half smile and a wave as he was leaving, which she said it, gave her that hope that she knew he wanted her to have. But he hadn't been returned by the time that her mother and grandmother decided that she needed to flee. So she was put on a train with 100 other kids to Wartime, a Jewish Orthodox children's home in Heiden, Switzerland. Her father, and then eventually her father was returned for a short period of time, but then she found out later in life, and I'll get to that, that they've been taken to concentration camps.
At least he came back. There was some sort of farewell.
She didn't have it with him because
No,
she was
but
already gone.
everyone
But
else did. Some silver lining.
yeah, and she did get at the children's home. She did have letters and stuff. She wrote back and forth.
Oh, that's
According to the
good.
article, it was for the first couple of years she was there. Then she lost touch. So she was able to, for a short period of time, write back and forth. And it did give her some hope that she would be reunited. So she actually does not, and has in the article said she does not consider herself a Holocaust survivor. She considers herself a Holocaust orphan because she was sent to an orphanage. Essentially, it was a children's home. And ultimately, she learned later in life that her parents had been killed. So she thinks of it that way. I do think that's, that's her life. It's what happened. So she sees it as not being a survivor. She sees it as a different situation for herself.
Yeah.
Um, but so she did hear as an adult, she found from the records from Auschwitz that her father, paternal grandmother, and maternal grandparents were sent to concentration camps and killed, but her mother was listed as disappeared. So she doesn't actually have official information about her mother. Like, I mean, she assumes, she passed away.
Yes.
So she lived in Switzerland for years. So she's there for 6 years. By the time she's 17, some Jewish emissaries, which, if you don't know what an emissary it is, I Googled it to make sure that everybody knows what we're saying. And I'm not just saying words that people are like, what? I don't know. It's just somebody who's on a mission and typically considered diplomatic, government related. Like missionaries are considered religious. They have a mission. And they came from Palestine and came to the children's home. And they had a mandate to evacuate the children to Palestine. So she was excited to see the ocean for the first time because she got on the boat. She was like, woo, ocean. But then she was really worried that she would never hear from her family again because they didn't know where she was. And there was no way of her reaching out to them. So it was kind of that bittersweet. She was getting this opportunity to even get farther away from everything. And yet she's leaving that link to her family. When she got to Palestine, she switched her first and middle name. So that's when she got the first name of Ruth. It was her middle name. She just switched them, kept the same last name. She didn't want to change her name too much in case her family did look for her. I'm going to flip the paper and make all kinds of noise. I'm sorry, I use a notebook like an old person. When she first got to Palestine, she was in the northern part of the country and she worked just picking tomatoes and olives. Then she moved to a seminary and was being trained to teach kindergarteners in Jerusalem. And from there, she became a member of the Israel's nascent defense force, which is a Jewish paramilitary. In some of the times she's talked about it, she's like, it wasn't like I was being a hero and going out and shooting people. I never shot anybody. Also, everybody was a member because we were fighting for the country and to defend the country. So she did learn how to become a sniper with amazing accuracy.
Dang.
She could put together a Sten gun, which I looked up, and it just looks like it does what it is. It's a submachine gun, and you push the rounds, go this way, in less than a minute with her eyes closed or
Dang.
blindfolded. Yep. In one of the interviews, it was like she was probably late 80s, early 90s, said she could still do it. Just wow, with your eyes closed. I probably could get around my school building at this point with my eyes closed, but there's not a lot I probably could do blindfolded.
Yeah.
By the time she was 20, so 1948, on her 20th birthday, during the Arab words are hard. Arab Roselli, I can't say it now.
Words are hard.
Israeli, Arab Israeli. I apologize. Words war in 1948. The cannonball went through a wall, and when it went through the wall, it killed two women beside her, and shrapnel went into her legs, and she almost lost her feet.
Ooh.
She had to have surgery and lay low. At 22 in 1950, she married her first husband, David. They moved to Paris for his medical school, and she began to study psychology at the Sorbonne. Whew. And then very quickly, David decided to leave Ruth and school and return to Israel. So,
Interesting.
yeah, very, very quickly. I don't have a dates for this, but it says after she, went to the Sorbonne, she was then teaching at the University of Paris, which all these things, wow. When she was 28 in 1956, the German government apparently gave everyone that had to quit school because of the war 5,000 marks, which I looked up was $2,771, which in today's money is
Holy
$32,000.
crap.
It's a lot of money, but I don't think there's a number or a value that you could put on the. That's just,
Trauma?
yeah,
No.
I
At
don't
least
think.
they got something and a
Yes.
considerable amount of something because that money went further back then. But still, yeah, you can't put a price on trauma.
No. They got, I guess the government does that. That governments are known to give money saying, oh, we're sorry, my bad. But it doesn't fix
Yeah,
the my bad, which is why my bad is just disrespectful. Okay. She did end up moving to New York City with the next husband. His name was Dan. He was a Frenchman, and they got married and had their first child, Miriam. Just such a pretty name. She named her Miriam in honor of her mother, Irma.
that's
The
sweet.
marriage, yeah, the marriage only lasted a year, but
Ooh,
she was living life. She was living in Washington Heights, which apparently is a German Jewish neighborhood. I don't know where Washington Heights is. I don't know New York. So I'm going to trust the information that I read. And while she was there, she received a scholarship to study sociology at the New School, which I actually looked up. I thought that just meant that it was a new school, and then they didn't give me further information. No, it actually is called the New School. It's
that's
a
a weird
private,
name.
it's a private research school. Because I was like, how do I write the New School? And I looked it up. It was very interesting. She ended up getting her master's. Her master's thesis just was about the refugee children that left Germany in 1939 and their importance of early socialization. In some of the articles that I read, it talked about how she was social. She did talk to people. She had a life. She had friends. She had parents. And then when she went to the children's home, she, kept going and learning. At some point, though, she was told at a certain age she wasn't allowed to be in school. Girls weren't. So she started just at night, after she was supposed to be asleep, reading her boyfriend's textbooks because she wanted to learn just as much as they were, which I thought was pretty cool. So, and then she said about her thesis, it was like psychologically, it helped her to keep part of her past alive. Whereas, it can be re traumatizing to go through it and talk about it, but she felt like
Yes.
it was helping her by keeping that memory going. So in 1961, she married her third husband. His given name was Manfred. He went by Fred. And of course, Westheimer, which is the name that she goes by. He was a telecommunications engineer. He was also escaped Nazi Germany. And he adopted her daughter from her previous marriage.
Oh,
And they
that's
had
sweet.
one son, and his name is Joel. So 1967, she's 39. She's almost 40. She's still going. She's working for research at Planned Parenthood, and she grew fascinated with the human sexuality, which is not her first peek into that and like her fascination into human sexuality. Apparently, when she was 10, she went into a locked cabinet and found her parents' marriage manual. Doesn't say what that is. I didn't
Interesting.
Google it because I was scared of what was going to come up on my
Yeah, I don't
phone.
want that on my search history either.
Yeah, so I don't know. Lots of things came to mind, but this is also this. She found this when she was 10, so that would have been 1938. I don't want to know what that book was. I don't,
No.
I don't nope. In 1970, she was 42. She received a doctorate of education in interdisciplinary studies of the family from Columbia University. So she started teaching at Lehman College in the Bronx, and she studied at Cornell, words, Cornell Medical School in the sexuality department and become a sex therapist. So this is all her backstory. She's gotten lots of schools. She loves to learn. She stayed up all night and stole her boyfriend's books. So she just kept going. In 1981 at 53, okay, so she's got her doctorate. She's learning. She's going and doing sexual studies. She did a radio segment on sex and relationships to give advice, and it was due to a mandate to cover community issues. So I'm assuming they just said, hey, maybe this is something we need to give information about just to make sure everybody knows. Hold on.
Ah, the babies.
Sorry, Birdie was talking. Come on, buddy. Come on.
We get to see, well, I get to see the cat. Maybe.
Well, here, I'll turn the computer in a second and you can see. I'm sure Birdie's going to yell at me again.
He'll just come in the camera at some point.
Yeah. Whoa. And so it was just, I guess there's certain things that, I guess, like things you had to go through in school, things I had to go through in school. You have to feel like you educate people. So there was just a mandate. So she went on and did a segment on the radio. And it was such a huge success. She began a weekly show called Sexually Speaking. And immediately she like rose to quick stardom. And she was better known as Dr. Ruth from this point on. And she did radio and TV and books. Like people in my generation, you hear that voice and you're like, Dr. Ruth, because she's got a thick German accent. She just spoke in a way that people did not speak back then. Like you didn't say certain things on TV unless it was on cable. You absolutely didn't say things before 9 p.m. because the children might hear. So
I mean, it's still very taboo, and it's also, well, slightly tangent, very weird because, well, Pip and I have been watching Good Mythical Morning and things, and Rhett and Link are your age. So it's also weird with their podcast when they've been doing segments of all September called Sextember. And it's weird to also think about the fact that they are your age and they're talking about like sexual health and like their sex lives and weird things.
Yeah.
But it's mostly like, hey, here's like, deep stigmatized sex and whatnot and like health things, but it's still weird. Super weird. Like still today.
Which is funny because we actually had more sex ed in school when I was in school than when you were in school.
Yeah, I got the basic like periods and stuff and like male anatomy for like a day in 5th grade. Then we got some sex ed in 7th grade, and then I got more sex ed and like birth control and STIs and whatnot in greater detail in 9th grade.
Oh, so we got like these huge units of study. 4th grade was when they started pulling us, separating us, and talking to us. And then I think they did a couple of days where we were all together. And then...
Oh, we were still separated by gender in that 1 week we did it in 5th grade. There's just one day where we did the other sex. I remember one girl apparently feeling very violated because she knew the boys were learning about vaginas and periods.
I mean, it's human anatomy. It's science. If you're feeling technical about it, we all got it. Well, I mean, not everybody's... People are born different.
You got intersex and it's a scale.
But y'all didn't get the same thing we did. And we had to watch The Miracle of Birth. Don't Google that.
No,
nobody.
I will say though,
nobody.
My 7th grade coach, health teacher, was better than most because, they're middle schoolers. They had questions and it was mentioned what the female condom is. And so the coach is like, yeah, I'll bring one in and show you guys. She never did, but, steps forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a little weirdly more liberal when I was growing up when it came to that, which is strange because it was forever ago. But she became extremely well known and did, talk shows and Google her and just listen to her voice and you'll know, wow, yes, you would know that voice. And she's just the thing was she was talking about things nobody ever talked about, and the way she talked about it, because she was very frank and she was very honest. She didn't like play around. And she at the time in the 80s and 90s, it was this is the AIDS epidemic, and it was huge. And she was openly supported the gay community. She was very vocalized and trying to educate people, because I remember when it was, oh my God, you can't sit on a toilet. Oh my God, if you go to the movies, what if somebody nicks you with a needle? And because that actually did happen. Um, it was this crazy fear. And I mean, I was a kid, so we had people
Yeah.
come talk to us that had it, and it was, there were so many stigmas. So her husband died in 1997, and he was 70 and she was 69. So that was a really long time ago, and she just passed away this year. So that was her
It's a
last husband.
long time.
Yeah. She's written tons of books. Heavenly Sex, Sexuality, and the Jewish Tradition, Sex After 50, Sex for Dummies, Dr. Ruth Talks to Kids. I never gonna Google that. So
I think that would be just more understanding the basics of your body
it is. I think it is too, because
in a
I know,
healthy, safe way of like,
yeah,
listen.
no, there's things that she did. The Joy of Connections was something that she was working on before she passed. I read that it will be published.
Okay,
Um,
good.
so like I said, most of this information I think comes from her testimonies that she did for a website, and the website is called USC Shona Foundation, and it is they compiled it. It looks like they like sent it out into the world in 1994, and I know they've been updating it since. It is just a repository of all these testimonies of Holocaust survivors and their story. And from that, they made an eyewitness activity that is based on the clips from her testimony. And it is with an info quest for fifth and sixth graders to learn about her childhood journey. Not, since it's fifth and sixth graders, not the other part of her life.
Yes.
Because they're fifth and sixth graders in some states, that would not fly. And it also can be companioned with a graphic novel that is called Roller Coaster Grandma. And you can actually buy it from Amazon. It's $12.60. I looked it up. And it is about a trip to the amusement park with her teenage grandkids. And during their adventure in the park, something will happen that will trigger a memory from her childhood, and she'll tell the story of her childhood. So it's
Oh
like
boy.
little stories of her childhood within the amusement park adventure with her grandkids, which that shows she is just trying to make the information accessible for everybody, regardless of who you are and your background, and make it, because it's important. It's our bodies.
Yes.
She's was still active in social media. She had her own YouTube channel. She was reaching out apparently more to millennials in the last few years, and just say, hey, stop what you're doing, and remember to make connections with people, because connections are what keeps us going. And I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, humans are social creatures.
Yeah. And after COVID, we kind of just forgot there we need to actually connect with people. So my fun facts: she was only 4 feet and 7 inches tall.
She was so tiny.
Mm-hmm. And I feel tiny all the time because I'm around tall people, and it's like no, no. Her third husband, Fred, the one that she said was like her real husband, the one that it fit better,
Mhm.
charmed her when they first met with his harmonica skills. I saw this. I thought it was weird. Her nickname was Grandma Freud. Never heard that before. I'm not
Mm.
sure that was something that stuck. People just wanted it to. I thought next one was really cool. In 2023, the New York governor appointed Dr. Ruth as New York's loneliness ambassador, as a first United States role. And for that position, the UK and Japan have similar roles. And their focus was to highlight the mental health crisis impacting seniors. And she was, it kind of go with her, just connect, people. Just connect. Pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Make a phone call. So I remember her, and she was on my list, and I don't even know what made me think of her before she passed. And I was like, ooh, Dr. Ruth. And then I saw that she passed, and I was like, oh, well, then that needs to be done soon, because that was timely.
Yeah, that's very valid. Yeah, it's been a month since she's passed.
I know. Can't believe it's middle of August already.
I know. It feels wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you got?
Well, since the Paris Olympics just wrapped up, I decided I would look up the first woman to win an Olympic medal.
Hmm.
Specifically, it's the first woman to win an Olympic gold medal.
Okay.
Um, and funny enough, it was during the 1900 Paris Olympics.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, it was the first Olympics that women could compete, and it's interesting. So in that Olympics in 1900, there was roughly 1,000 athletes total. The Olympics this year in 2024, there were a lot more than that. Like the U.S. alone had over 300. Um, and I find it really funny too because there was a bunch of TikToks and things of people going, "Oh my God, I wish I could go to the Olympics," and I got the same thing because I still wanted to and broken, so I can't. And there's videos of like, "Oh, I could do this or I could do that," and someone's like, "I could just be the coxswain for rowing," and I'm like, "No, it's not that easy. You gotta actually like the sport, love the sport, go
And
practice. You have to
know what
steer the
you're doing.
boat. You don't have to yell at them. You gotta be like a mini coach." So as a note for anyone who decides that being a coxswain is easy to join the Olympics, it's not. Competition's a lot more difficult nowadays. Very different than 1900.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, so the first female Olympic champion, I'm gonna butcher her name because so she was born in New York, and her name is Helen Barbie, her maiden name. But eventually, her like as a child, her family moved to Sweden, and first name is Helene. Helene. Um,
Helena?
I don't. It's not. I don't know. There's accent marks. I tried looking it up, and to no disrespect to her and her name, but I'm going to call her Helen out of ease of not butchering it every time. Um, and so her full name that she's known as is Hélène de Pourtalès, also probably butchering her married name. Um, she was born 1868 in New York and passed away in 1945. So a little bit about her and kind of like how she became into these roles she did. So her dad was Henry Isaac Barbie, originally from Canton of Vaud, made his fortune in America, and he was one of the main investors in the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Railway. And January 12th, 1865, which he spoke fluent English, as apparently is needed to note, he married Mary. I'm also butchering this name. Lorillard. And so Mary was the daughter of an extremely wealthy high society New York family. So already Helen is born into a very wealthy upper class family. So obviously that makes a huge difference in the fact that her sport that she got into for the Olympics and everything. And so she was born April 28th, 1868. And because her parents were rather wealthy, her dad was able to freely indulge his passions such as boating. And he would occasion go on his little steamboat and take it he took it to Geneva. And because they were at the center of upper class Geneva society, they were able to rub shoulders with some of the most prominent figures, which also probably helped a lot of things in this.
Opening
So they
doors.
had, huh?
Opening doors. That opens
Yes.
doors.
One
Yeah.
of these acquaintances was Baroness Julie von Rothschild, She was an eccentric lady with a considerable fortune. She also had a steamboat, um, and she had shared Henry Barbie, Helen's dad's, passion and ambition to break the existing speed records. So she also enjoyed boating or yachting, and she earned the title of fastest yachting lady of her day. And again, all of this wealth and high society, young Helen Barbie's life revolved around clothes, formal dinners, balls, and handsome cavaliers. She lived in Bellevue since childhood because, according to her father, the climate at Lake Geneva was better suited for the family than the coal, dust choked metropolis of New York, which is very valid.
Yeah.
And at an early age, Helen had followed the sporting activities of Baroness von Rothschild on the water. The Baroness was sometimes accompanied by a kindly, amiable lady, Empress Elizabeth of Austria. So it was inevitable that Helen would be interested in boating, especially since it was the number one topic at the soirees she attended. And instead of steamers, however, she opted for sailing boats. And with her love for boating, it was obvious that she was going to marry someone who was also passionate about sailing. And that happened in 1891. She married Hélène de Pourtalès, thus becoming the stepmother of Guy de Pourtalès, who would go on to become a famous author. And so, with her husband, she participated in many regattas, not just on Lake Geneva, but also around the Canes, where the couple owned a villa. Back then, she was a very experienced sailor, spending every summer on the lake and training in Newport in the off season. She also attended the America's Cup, in which yachtsmen had vied for the trophy known as Old Mug, roughly how you may say it, since 1851. And so she described the regatta in 1887 in detail in her correspondence. So, long history of interest in boating and loving it, and of course, her husband also loves boating and sailing. So, in around 1900, which had been known back in 1894 that the 1900 Olympic Games, officially known as Games of the Second Olympiad, were to take place May 14th to October 28th as part of the World Exposition in Paris. And for the first time ever, because even in ancient Greece, women were not allowed in the Olympics, let alone were they even allowed to view the Olympics without being punished. So 1900 was the first Olympics that women were allowed to complete. But this greatly displeased many people, such as Pierre de Coubertin, and he later wrote, "As to the admission of women to the games, I remained strongly against it, and it was against my will that they were admitted to a growing number of competitions." Zola, on the other hand, whom I do not know much more other than Zola, was a great advocate of any physical activity that can contribute to the development of a woman, provided that she does not overdo it. And to symbolize the opening of no more than 5 disciplines for women, golf, tennis, sailing, croquet, and equestrianism, the Olympic advertising posters depicted female athletes, including a poster advertising fencing tournaments with a woman on it, which women were not allowed to compete in. And in fact, the official poster of the 1900 Olympic Games is a fencing poster with a woman on it in a sport that she was not allowed to compete in.
Well, that's worth a lot of money if you got one of those suckers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Wow.
Um, so, to build to this, after achieving a string of victories in Switzerland, Helen and Herman registered for the games with their sailboat Larina, a typical Lake Geneva 20-footer. Words are very hard today, too. So it came about that Helena was among the first 22 female competitors at the Olympic Games. Only
Wow.
22, and there was roughly 900 something men. And what's unique about this, 124 years later, is Paris 2024 is the first Olympics where I believe it was equal number of men and women sports. I don't believe it was equal number in athletes percentages roughly. I think it was in sports. I did not double check. but it's the first Olympics where it's actual equal representation of men and women. It took 124 years to reach that from the first Olympics with women being allowed to compete.
Well, and that means that it was 124 divided by 4, 31 Olympic Games. That's a lot of Olympic Games.
That is a lot of Olympic Games. Very many.
Yeah.
Um, and so the race to qualify started May 20th, and I'm going to butcher this name. It looks like Milan, but Mulan, maybe Meulan,
Milan?
on the expanse of water maintained by the Paris Yacht Club. And all boats weighing less than 10 tons had to compete the race in order to be allowed to sail in their respective categories. So, typical qualifiers.
Yeah.
So in that time, 65 yachts covered a distance of 11 kilometers. And on that day, there was only a slight breeze. So that meant the sailing came down to exclusively technical skill. And the couple who were accustomed to the weather at Lake Geneva qualified easily. Their boat was given the starting number 22. And 2 days later, the 20-foot class lined up at the start. And given the number of participants, the 19-kilometer course that had to be tackled was technically very challenging. But regardless, Helen and Herman won again, and on May 22nd, Helen received the gold medal as skipper, making her the first woman to earn a gold medal in the Olympics. Um, she was not the only one to win a medal, let alone a gold medal in the Olympics. Because she was 32 at this time, and Englishwoman Charlotte Cooper won gold in tennis. So she was the first woman to win gold in a individual event, whereas Helen was the first woman to win gold in any event, just because of the 2 month difference of the events.
Scheduling, basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
And then there were two other women that won bronze. It was Marion Jones and Hedwig Rosenbaum, the Americans. And I believe tennis, because it says the same discipline. And so those are the first female Olympic champions in history.
Cool.
Helen, as we've discussed, are discussing Charlotte Cooper, and then Marion Jones and Hedwig Rosenbaum, which is, I say, pretty decent. You got 4 out of the 22 winning a medal.
I mean, that's
pretty good numbers.
Good percentage right there.
For a start, yes.
Yeah.
And so because of this, when being the first woman to win an Olympic medal, especially a gold medal, Hélène de Pourtalès brought fleeting fame in the world of sports and among the Geneva aristocracy, mainly because yachting was much in fashion in the most well-to-do circles at the time. And with this, her stepson was introduced to water sports by his father and Helen. But throughout the rest of the world, the Olympic champion Helen received little attention because at the beginning of the century, the press largely shared the opinion of Pierre de Coubertin, meaning they really didn't like women competing in the Olympics because it's 1900 and they're extremely sexist. We didn't even have the right to vote, amongst many other things.
Yeah.
And so Helen and Herman lived together until 1904, where Herman died on July 9th, leaving behind a considerable legacy worth more than $6 million US. And from then on, Helen divided her time between Mice and her Paris residence. And in 1945, she passed away in Geneva at age 77 in complete anonymity. Anonymity? Words.
Anonymity. Now I can't say it.
Exactly. You overthink it.
Yeah.
And so while her sister-in-law, Marguerite Isabelle de Pourtalès Navel, achieved renown. Words are wow. This article is not weird. Granted, it is a Swiss article, so that's probably why some things are a little awkward. Her sister-in-law would achieve renowned fame for her Egyptological studies. That's a word. Her studies the side of her husband. And Helen never gained wide recognition. I really can't say words now.
Recognition, I
In her
think.
day, because the science sector was increasingly opened up to women, while sport remained almost exclusively a masculine domain. In addition, Helen's international sporting career was limited to the Olympic Games of 1900, as few journalists and commentators noted that she was one of those who paved the way for women to compete at the Olympic Games, let alone mentioning her gold medal. So, the Swiss American dual citizen spent most of her life at Lake Geneva. However, Helen was by no means just a freshwater sailor. Remembered by history for nothing more than a lucky catch in the form of a gold medal, she was a pioneer and an Olympic champion, and that much is indisputable. So, there's a little relevant history as well with the first woman to win a gold Olympic medal 124 years ago. And at least for the US, women won 26 out of the 40 gold medals that the US won this past Olympics. So the women are doing way better.
I didn't, I've seen some of the things, but I didn't know that it was, wow, that's a lot.
Yes. The
Nice.
US won 40 gold medals, as I just mentioned. We tied for technical first place of gold medals with China, that also won 40 gold medals. But we earned a lot more silver and bronze than any other country. I think our total medal count was about 125.
Oh,
And we're the first country to have surpassed, out of all Olympics, 3,000 medals earned. Yeah.
that's a lot of medals.
And the worst part to think is, we're really good at the sports we send a lot of athletes to, but there's a lot of them that they have to work multiple jobs,
Yeah, I know.
yet they're clearly the best in their sport in the world.
Yeah, I know. I know. When, yeah. When rap stars are having to help pay for Olympic athletes, which,
Yeah.
by the way, huge shout out to anybody who is helping sponsor a person's dream.
Yes.
I
No,
mean,
it was
unless,
impressive. It was so cool. I love seeing all the posts with Snoop Dogg.
yeah, I know. It's funny, especially being the age I am and
Seeing
where,
the difference of how he is.
yeah, how things
Yeah.
have changed.
I think my favorite thing, I mean, there's a bunch of wonderful things that Snoop did during the Olympics, but the funniest one I've seen so far is him like jokingly messing around with Michael Phelps, like, "Oh, I got the build. I can do this. It's not that hard." And he's going, "Man, you guys, you're really good at this. This is hard." And swimming and just playing in the pool.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I thought him and Martha dressed as for their equestrian outfits. I thought that
Yeah.
was kind of funny, but it's just, it's nice to put humanity into it. And it's usually so just routine.
Hmm.
That made it show that these are people. And
Yes.
and because they're not professionals, because if you're a professional, you can't even be in the Olympics. That means that they aren't getting paid for this. Like, they are not getting paid for the sport that they do because they
Hmm.
can't be professionals to join the Olympics. Like,
Or
that's,
some of them just aren't professional, and
yeah,
some of them you can see still be professional and join the Olympics, but it's very different.
yeah. It's the idea of the Olympics is because these are people we know that just have worked so hard and want to show it and highlight it. Just
Yes.
super cool. Well,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I was also thinking, the idea of us being like having guests on different women and being their short little like
Hmm.
living biography. Um, we're too small to get anyone high profile, but reach out to someone that may not be as famous from like the
Dolly,
Olympics or some other
Dolly.
things. Huh?
Hey, Dolly.
Dolly will not join this quite yet, probably. We don't have enough followers or listeners.
Yeah. I can dream big. I can dream big.
But in the meantime, if someone that is listening would like to come on online, because we're not traveling or bringing people, we don't have the money for that.
We're not even in the same state or
That
time
too.
zone.
Um, come email us at likeabombpodcast@gmail.com. Be like,
And
hey, I got a story, or I'd like to join and tell a story, be a guest. I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll eventually do Instagram and TikTok, I guess, and then Patreon, maybe.
we're figuring it out as we go. And if you know anything about how to do this with TikTok, let us know because we could use your help. I
Yes, we do have comments on YouTube available and Spotify. You can comment, like, subscribe, all those cheesy little things.
Let us know. We're trying our
Yeah,
best.
we're
Okay,
babies.
so go do something extraordinary.